call me out and taught me tough with love, with love.
Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. It'll just be me today because Michelle has to work, but I'm going to tell you a story about how our rabbit died. He died, I think last Thursday. He passed away. He was only 3.5 years old. I don't think there were any signs that he gave us for him being like sick or anything. Usually they live up to 10 years old, and he was only 3.5, almost 4. We got him back in October, and he was a weird rabbit. He loved his own space. He loved hanging out with our cats. Our cats were like his best friends. I'll show some videos. We got Fred. Fred is the youngest one, and how we did it was let them like one by one introduce them. So we had them like in our room for a day, and then after like day one, like we let him out and introduced him with the one rabbit or the one cat, and Gus, who loves anybody and takes anybody in. He just like laid there and just like licked him and just was chill. And then the next day we did Fred, and Fred was just a little baby kitten and just ran around and hopped around with him. And then Trevor, my dog, he was okay. He was just like, what is this thing? And just kept eating the poop. And everyone thinks it's gross, but it's literally just hay. And he just picked up after him, and he loved his own space. He did not want to be human touched or anything. Michelle had a rabbit named Bubbles, and she had him for like 13 years. And I came home one day and I surprised her with another rabbit, and I was like, here we go, his name's Oscar. And Bubbles is the complete opposite of Oscar. Bubbles, you can lay in the front lawn and she would just chill with a family or a dog or anything walk by. She was not scared. This is Gus, the one who loves everybody. She loved to cuddle. She was very, like, she loved human touch, everything. Oscar, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. I remember one time at our apartment where we got him, I was showing my friend Mariah. Like, I just picked him up and I was showing her. He jumped so far out of my arms onto, like, I was like in the hallway, and he jumped so, you're shaking the table. He jumped so high and so far. He landed on his back onto the TV, and then off the TV stand, and then onto the ground. And I thought I killed him because he didn't move for a second. And when he moved, it was the funniest thing. And I laugh out of nervousness anyway, so I wouldn't say it was funny, but it was funny. Just like both of our reactions. And when he didn't move, I was like, great, I only had him for a few days and here he is. He did not like to be held. He loved to cuddle Trevor sometimes, but he loved to be on his own. When we moved into our house, we were trying to figure out where to put him, and we made him like his whole like cage, and he had a whole house thing, and he was just downstairs, and he loved it. Anytime you came downstairs, he'd hop over, he'd come greet you. And then Emma, she'd always like run around in circles with him down the cage. She still does it. She goes up to the cage, and we're like waiting for her to get into her crate so we can leave, but she always greets him before she goes in the crate or after she comes out. And she ran around with him, and Max didn't really care about her. And then I had a dream that I gave him treats, but they looked like popcorn, and I fed him the treats, and Michelle said, don't feed him too much, he'll die. And then I got woken up by Michelle telling me that Oscar had passed away. And I was very, like, shocked and, like, mad at the same time. I was like, what? because I was just like, I just dreamt this. Like, how do you know? And she's holding him, and she just puts him on my chest, and he's still warm. He's not stiff. So I know it just happened. And I said, what happened? She said, I don't know. I went downstairs to get the dog's food, and Emma went down, and she was looking at the cage weird, and, ow, Gus. And she looked, and she said he was halfway in and out of his cage, and she just knew. And I just held him, and I just petted him, and then she was just holding me, and I just looked at her. I said, what do you want to do? She said, I want to take him to the place where we got Bubbles. And where we got Bubbles, I'll show you. So where we got Bubbles, I just called around an area, and the lady was so nice. And it was like 2012 when he died, or when she died. And you go to this place, and it's the most depressing thing for an animal. And she said, she was like, it's literally set up like a funeral service for your animal. You come in, and they tell you, or she took him, Bubbles, from us, and puts her down on the bed, and there's like a bed, and then there's like 2 candles, and then there's chairs behind you, and it's just like sad music playing, and it was so heartbreaking. And she gave us a few minutes, and then you go into the office, and you talk about like what you wanted to do. So I surprised Michelle with this urn box, because when we got Bubbles, it was only, it came back in like a bag. And so I bought this separately, and I went and picked it up, and I came back home, and I surprised her with it. So this is Bubbles, and she was pretty big. She's very big. And then so she's in here, and then they made it, it's so dirty, it's so old. They made this little thing for her, to her paw print and her name. And so she said she wanted to do that with Oscar. Okay, we have 3 dogs and 2 cats. I said, do you expect us to do that with all our animals? And she's like, yeah. I said, oh, well, I don't want a house full of urns with animals in it. And so I get it, they're my babies, but I think just like to have something memory for me to keep would be more touching than a whole house full of urns. Maybe I'm just being a jerk, but that's just how I feel. So she said she wanted to do that with Oscar. So I called the place. I told them I'm coming around 6, and we got there around 7, only because we wanted our animals who knew him to grieve. So Max didn't understand what was going on and just kind of like licked him. And then Emma was like, yay, he's up. We can finally play. But didn't quite really understand. And Trevor was laying on the dog bed, and we're like, Trevor, come here. And we just put Bubbles down, or Bubbles, we put Oscar down. And Trevor was like, oh. And then he just, like, his ears went flat, and then he got really low, and then he sat right next to him, and just looked up at sad as hell. And it broke my heart, because I've never seen an animal grieve like that before. And then I've never seen him, like, any animal grieve like that. So then we gave him to, it was Gus's turn, and we just put him on, like, the kitchen floor right here. And Gus was just like, I'm gonna hold it since the cat wants to shake the table. Gus, like, walked up to him and, like, got low and, like, sniffed him, and then was like, wow, that sucks, and carried on. So it's different to see. And then before we left, so that was like in the morning, and then before we left, we wanted Fred to say goodbye. So he was in like a basket with a blanket, and we put Oscar on the floor, and we had Fred come over, and Fred sniffed him, and it was the most heartbreaking thing, more than Trevor's. He got in the basket, and he just kept kissing him, and he kept looking at us, and he would walk away and then come back, and it was just, oh my God, I have pictures, I'll post it, but it was the saddest thing I ever seen. And I asked Michelle before we wrapped him up, I said, do you have another blanket? I have a red one in my car, and we can give him his own blanket, because I didn't know what happened to the other blanket that we had for Bubbles. And she kind of just looked at me, and she walked to her closet, because I have mine, she has hers. She walked to her closet, and she pulled out the blanket that we wrapped Bubbles in, because that was Bubbles' favorite blanket. She didn't like me. Michelle swears she did, but she loved my blanket. And she pulled out the blanket that we wrapped Bubbles in, and we wrapped it up in Oscar. And I cried. And we just sat there and we hugged each other, and it was sad. So then we went to the place. We finally made it. It was like 7. We made it there. He was just like, just put him down and then take your time. And so we were there for a while. Michelle was just losing it, and she's just talking about how like she's gonna miss how soft he was, and it just sucks. We don't know what happened. And then I said, okay, well, I'll give you some time. I'm gonna go and get this ready. So then we went, we both went over there and we talked about it. And I guess we didn't have to pick out an urn. He already automatically comes in an urn, so that was good. And then we got his name engraved on it, and I have to go pick him up today, so I'm super excited. He'll be home when Michelle gets home, and he gets his own little paw print thing. So I'm actually gonna go and pick him up now, and then when I get home I will show you, and I will show you where they sit on our little stand. So that was a sad story, and Trevor just kept barking, and I just got mad. I was like, there was a death in the family. So yeah, it was a very emotional day. And like even the weekend, like you just go downstairs like at any time, and like you don't hear him, so it's like it's very quiet, it's very weird. And Sunday is usually trash day, and that's when we clean out everything and like throw everything to the curb. And I told her, I was like, are you gonna clean up Oscar? And she said no. So we still have all this stuff down there, and she told me not to come home with another rabbit, so I will not. But yeah, that's the story of how my baby Oscar died. And I will show you some videos and some pictures, and yeah, I will see you when I meet him.
Oh, no, no.
Okay, so I just picked up Oscar. It's hot outside. So this is the basket that we had him in. It was from my sister's wedding. And then this is the blanket that we put Bubbles in, and along with Oscar. And then best friends come into our lives and leave paw prints on our hearts. And then here's the ink print. And here's what the urn looks like. And then we got his name engraved on it. I think they did really good. It's called Adoring Pets Funeral Home and Cremation Service. So if anybody was wondering, it's right there. So there's Oscar. He's finally coming home. That's it for my story time. The next time I will see you next. I don't know, I'll keep you posted. So
You're the